success when used in combat against Allied shipping. With the capture of the Biscay bases, all U-boat activity was centred on Norway. It was from here that the very last coverage of a U-boat ace was filmed when Captain Lieutenant Brandy sailed into Trondheim harbour in early 1945. The cameras were also on hand to record the very last public appearance by Adolf Hitler when, on the afternoon of the 20th of April 1945, amid a lull in the Allied bombing of Berlin, he inspected teenage soldiers of the Hitler Youth, with HJ leader Arthur Axmann looking on in celebration of his 56th birthday. The only cruises by the new Type 21 took place on the same day that Hitler committed suicide in Berlin. U-2511 and 3008 departed Norway for the Caribbean. 5 days before, US and Soviet troops had finally met on the banks of the River Elbe, thereby dividing Germany into two. In Moscow, 324 guns were fired to celebrate the meeting at Torgau. With Berlin encircled, the Soviets girded themselves for the last act and began the final assault on Berlin itself. Although the Germans attempted to offer strong resistance, by May the 1st, the troops of General Zhukov, now close to the very centre of the city, were approached by General Krebs, the chief of the German General Staff, under a flag of truce. On the following day, the Germans in the city laid down their arms. It was now left to Dönitz, as Hitler's chosen successor, to end the war. On May the 4th, Admiral Freeberg signed the surrender in Montgomery's tent at Lüneburg Heath.
This paper, and they will sign in order of seniority, and General Admiral von Friedeberg will sign first.
That afternoon, Dönitz had the following message dispatched to all submarines. My U-boat men, 6 years of U-boat war lie behind us. You fought like lions. A crushing material superiority has forced us into a narrow area. A continuation of our fight from the remaining bases is no longer possible. U-boat men, undefeated and spotless, you lay down your arms after an heroic battle without equal. We remember in deep respect our fallen comrades who have sealed with death their loyalty to Führer and fatherland. Comrades, preserve your U-boat spirit with which you have fought courageously, stubbornly and imperturbably through the years for the good of the fatherland. Long live Germany. Although 231 U-boats were scuttled, most surrendered as ordered while flying a black flag, to be drawn up in forlorn ranks as those of an earlier generation had in 1918. Having sailed into Portland Harbour in the US to surrender U-858, one can only wonder at the thoughts going through the mind of Captain Lieutenant Thilo Bolde at the abrupt termination of his U-boat war. One final ceremony now took place. At 11:30 p.m. on May the 8th in Berlin, a German delegation led by Field Marshal Keitel, representing the German Army, with Freiberg for the Navy and Stumpf for the Luftwaffe, signed the third instrument of surrender. The European war was finally over, but for Dönitz, as for many other German war leaders, there now came the reckoning. On the afternoon of May the 22nd, Dönitz received a message that he was to present himself to General Rooks, the chief of the Allied Control Commission on board the liner Patria. Once aboard, Dönitz was officially informed that today the acting German government and the German High Command, with several of its members, shall be taken into custody as prisoners of war. Thereby the acting German government is dissolved. One ignominy awaited Dönitz when, along with General Jodl and Albert Speer, they were paraded in front of a horde of waiting photographers who snapped merrily away, recording for posterity the rather forlorn appearance of Hitler's chosen successor and Germany's last Führer. All three men already knew their fate as they stood embarrassed, whilst all around them bulbs flashed as photographers gloried in their evident discomfort. In 2 years Dönitz had seen the sea war snatched from his grasp and his cherished U-boats reduced to mere trophies in the harbours of the victors. Later that same afternoon, Dönitz, in company with other German military figures, was taken to a local airfield and placed on a US Army C-47 transport. Some months later, Dönitz joined Göring, Hess, Speer, Raeder and other leading Nazis in the Spartan cells awaiting trial at the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal. Dönitz was arraigned at Nuremberg on 3 counts, all of which was subsumed under the heading of war crimes. The most significant of these, however, concerned the reference in the indictment to having been responsible for murder and ill treatment of persons on the high seas. He was fortunate in being able to depend upon a lawyer whom many in the Allied Prosecuting Council believed to be the most brilliant of all of those acting for the defence. Capitan Otto von Kranzbühler had been Dönitz's chosen advocate, having served in the German Judge Advocate's office where he acquired the reputation as an exceptional lawyer. This expertise rapidly became apparent when Kranzbühler slowly, and with deft touch, reduced much of the prosecution's charges against Dönitz by demonstrating that most of what he was being accused of was, in fact, accepted practice in modern sea warfare. By careful use of law, Kranzbühler was able to demonstrate how much of what Dönitz was being accused of was naval practice even in World War I. Reflecting on the effectiveness of Kranzbühler, British prosecutor David Maxwell Fyfe said he never put a foot wrong during the trial. When finally Dönitz took the stand, the sympathy his calm demeanour in court had fostered up to then was replaced in the minds of some by an altogether most hostile view. The correspondent of the Times noted how, once he spoke, you saw the real man, harsh, ruthless, arrogant. You felt in him the eternal German militarist. You saw that his selection as Hitler's successor was probably no mere hazard.
Will you state your full name?
Karl Dönitz.
Will you repeat this oath after me? I swear by God,
Ich schwöre bei Gott,
the Almighty and Omniscient,
dem Allmächtigen und Allwissenden,
that I will speak the pure truth
dass ich die reine Wahrheit sage
and will withhold and add nothing.
und nichts verschweigen.
Much attention was focused on the claim made by the prosecution that Dönitz had in 1942 issued an order which they claimed encouraged U-boat commanders to deliberately kill survivors from vessels they had sunk. Dönitz carefully explained it by accounting for the context wherein it had arisen.
Am 1. Mai 1945 als Staatsoberhaupt.
On the 12th of September 1942, Werner Hartenstein, commander of the U-156, had sunk the English liner Laconia, believing it to be a troop ship. On discovering it had been carrying Italian prisoners of war, he rescued many survivors, including a number of the ship's crew. However, while attempting to transport them while running on the surface, he was attacked by US Navy aircraft. Subsequently, Dönitz ordered that there be no repetition of such action. Kranzbühler secured the testimony of Admiral Chester Nimitz, chief of the US Pacific Fleet. He stated that it had been US Navy policy not to rescue the survivors from ships sunk by US submarines where their own vessels or their missions were at risk. This was exactly the context that Dönitz claimed was covered by his order forbidding his submariners from doing the same. Although cleared of the major charges, Dönitz nevertheless received a sentence of 10 years imprisonment. But, as one biographer has observed, with the evidence available today, he would have almost certainly gone to the gallows. On July the 18th, 1946, Dönitz was awakened at 4 in the morning and told to prepare for his move to the Spandau maximum security prison in Berlin. So was to begin 10 years as prisoner number 2, along with Speer, Raeder and Hess. Even in prison, however, he regaled the others with his view that Germany had lost the war because the U-boat arm had not been strong enough in 1939. Attempts to get him released early came to naught. Kranz-Bühler told him in 1952 that he must count on serving his full sentence. On the stroke of midnight on the appointed day, 10 years after entering Spandau, prisoner number 2 left through the gates to begin his life anew. In the years of his retirement, Dönitz wrote his memoirs. In 1962, his wife Ingeborg died. In that same year, he embraced Christianity. His final years were spent once more in writing yet more memoirs, with the volume My Changeful Life being published in 1968. His declining years were spent in the bosom of his family, and in his last year he was a frail and wizened old man. He was honoured by his former officers who attended him and feted him until his death on Christmas Eve 1980. Denied a state funeral by the Bonn government, his old comrades buried him on January the 6th, 1981. Until his dying day, Dönitz had remained immensely proud of the achievements of his U-boat Waffe, who, in 5 years of war, sank no fewer than 2,840 merchantmen and 84 warships, albeit at the price of 28,000 of their own submariners. In a real sense, the U-boat war was Dönitz's own. Under his guidance and care, the Grey Wolves, who so nearly won the war for the Third Reich, generated a legend that has survived to this day.